Welcome everyone to the first episode of the We Mean Business podcast. I'm today's host, Austin Marar, the president of Chat's Business Council, and I'm here with three of our Business Council members to discuss the university application process for future grade 12 students. So I'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. I'll start with the person to my left.
Hi, my name is Lisa Becker. I applied to Western Ivy, Queen's Commerce, Laurier BBA, and arts programs at both Queen's and Western.
Hi, my name's Haley Levine. I applied to Queen's Commerce, Western Ivy, and then a few arts programs at Western and Queen's, as well as Dow Commerce and Management.
Hi, my name's Max Goldsmith. I applied to Western Arts, Western Ivy, Queen's Arts, Queen's Commerce, and University of Indiana Business Program in the United States.
All right, so today we'll be discussing the application process. I'm going to be asking these three just some guiding questions about their experience over the last year and a little bit more, I'm sure. And we hope that everyone learned something a little bit about the process to hopefully help you, guide you when you start. So the first thing I'm going to ask all three of you, and if you want to answer, just jump in, is what factors are most important to you when choosing university? So there are obviously a couple things that play into it, like the program you choose, campus life, obviously, if you want to go to a school that has a great campus life, if the location mattered at all, and also about getting scholarships to certain schools. So whoever wants to can just jump in.
Yeah, so I'll start, and to me, the most important factor was the program I was looking at. So I was looking at the two business programs, Ivy and Commerce, in Canada, and that was the main factor for me because I want to end up in the business world, and those were the two programs that I felt were the strongest programs in Canada that would allow me to achieve my goal. However, some other factors I did consider was campus life because I felt that I could be at the best program, but I need to be happy doing so. Otherwise, I'm going to be dreadful. I'm not really going to enjoy my experience, and that will just take away from my ability to maximize success in the classroom. So I also looked at student life, and I felt that Queen's and Western had student life that I would enjoy socially.
And specifically Queen's and Western, I know it's important to a lot of us to be surrounded by a big Jewish community. So that's a big factor when deciding, but both Queen's and Western both have significant Jewish communities, so that's not really a factor.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on a little bit, obviously before you can accept a university offer or be offered by a university, you have to complete supplementary applications. I know from personal experience they're very stressful because every single school you apply to have different applications and requirements that you have to go through. So I just was wondering if the three of you could talk about it. Talk about your experience with the supplementary applications. Did you prepare for them? If so, how did you prepare for them? Just jump right in.
So I did the Ivy and Commerce applications. They are similar in the way that they both have video interviews. So it's on a platform called Kira, and basically it pops up with a question, and then you have a set amount of prep time and then a set amount of time to answer the questions. And then for Ivy, there's also an additional portion where you write essays. That definitely took the longest, and I would say if I were to give any advice, my advice would be to start your Ivy essays as early as possible because you're going to go through a lot of phases of editing and deciding what you actually want to write down and what you think is going to present yourself the best to the schools. So that took the longest for me.
And also you really want to start writing early because there is a word limit. So for Ivy, it's 500 words per essay, and Commerce, your essay is on the spot and it's 335 words. And I think people really do underestimate how long it takes to cut down your essays but still have good quality content. So the earlier you start, the better. And for Commerce, there is prep, just not as much because both the essay and the video are live, but there are sample questions online that I highly recommend to practice because it really helped me. And just honestly start as soon as you can.
So regarding the two live interviews from both Queen's and Western on the Kira platform, we'll start with the Western one. The Western one consisted of about 5 questions, and you had a minute or roughly a minute to prepare your answer, and then it started recording you. And to prepare for this, what I did was I went out a few weeks in advance, and I thought of key business characteristics that Western would want to see. So I thought of characteristics like initiative and problem solving, collaboration, etc. And I kind of took down some jot notes regarding what are some experiences I had that fit under these categories. And like Lisa said, there are questions available online, so I utilized some of those, practiced with those, and I was able really to prepare myself when recognizing a question and the trait it wanted and connecting that with a trait and experience I've had. For Queens, on the other hand, they actually have a rubric with key characteristics they outlined for you. So for that live interview, it was a bit easier to prepare just because I knew the ones they wanted. I still went through that same process of identifying experience that I had and making connections. But the thing that Queens on their live video has that Western doesn't is a written question. So they have you have roughly 10 minutes to write an answer to a prompt they give you. It's about roughly 300 words. So for that, I'd advise the same thing. Know what you want to talk about for each characteristic, but you also want to practice writing 300 words in 10 minutes because it may sound easy, but it really isn't. You don't get spell check. You don't get access to other stuff like Grammarly you might have access to on a normal Google Doc. So you want to make sure you're keeping up with your spelling ability as well as your grammar, making sure you present yourself in the best way possible.
And also just some other tips. So for Queens, a lot of people think that they want the most crazy story. They want the most like amazing leadership role. But honestly, what they want is they want you to follow the rubric to a T. So you really just have to make sure in both your video and your essay, you hit the rubric exactly their points using their exact wording. And for Western, for your Ivy essays, make sure to have quantitative data. So you want numbers, like I raised X amount of money, we recruited X amount of members. They really like statistics.
Yeah, those are some great answers. I also think in general, most of the other business programs have similar supplementaries. So U of T, Schulich at York, they also have very similar applications. So the next thing I want to ask you guys is about extracurriculars. So obviously a lot of these schools are looking for strong extracurriculars and volunteer hours, and then ask for personal statements for you to describe and explain them. So I know Max touched upon it a little bit already where he talked about, the different characteristics that these schools are looking for. But I think it's a really underrated skill, an underrated thing to be getting involved early in high school. So I was wondering if you guys could talk about any of your extracurriculars and your involvement through these 4 years of high school and how they helped you through the application process.
So most of the people listening to this are probably in grade 11, but it's not too late to get involved. Like for Ivy, for example, one of my extracurriculars was business council, which I joined in grade 12. But it's also really important to have something that stands out. For example, one of my main essays was about how I go to Spain every summer and I teach underprivileged kids English. It's global, it shows leadership, collaboration, and they want to see you thinking outside the box. I also talked about sports teams I was on, school trips I took, so that's a great opportunity to get involved if you can go on a school trip, like to West Virginia to build houses for people. And I also talked about a job I had, like a paying job, which they also really like to see because they like to see that you can manage time with working. And then I talked about how I was also the president of a club. So really, the more you get involved, the better. I really liked that I had extracurriculars to pick from. I wasn't scrambling to find any, and it makes you feel a lot less stressed about the whole process.
I would also say that a lot of people, when they think of extracurriculars, are thinking of like traditional things like DECA and student council, and those are great, but those are things that they're seeing from a majority of the applicants that are coming in. So really, when you're doing your extracurriculars, look for things that would set you apart and also show a lot of your personality because they care about that too. And I think it's important to note that for Ivy specifically, they require a reference for every extracurricular that you're putting in. So you can't just make up stuff on the spot because they will know that it's not true. But I think, as Lisa said, like, it's never too late to get involved, but whatever you can do that can set yourself apart is great.
One key piece of advice I like to start with is that for grade 9 and grade 10 students is you really want to think ahead. So when I was in grade 10, I joined for my volunteer hours a board through the UJA. It's called Jewish Teen Board. And what we did was we raised money independently and each individual came with their money, and we collected as a group fund, and we made a mission statement. We reached out to charities. We went through a process of deciding where we want to donate our group of money to, and ultimately we have a ceremony where we end up donating our money. And although this was done and gave me my volunteer hours, I was really able to connect this experience to these two schools because it had a lot to do with business, whether that was managing money, collaboration as a group, amongst other things, even leadership positions in that board. There's what I'm trying to say is that you need to make sure what you are doing is going to connect to where you want to go, because if you're doing things that just for example, for volunteer hours that have, no meaning to you personally, one, it's not a real big purpose of doing it. Like, you have to be meaningful. You're going to want to do it. It's going to make it easier to talk about. But two, if you're doing things that connect different aspects of your life, it'll make it easier to talk about in a supplemental essay or a video.
And also, you want to make sure that for both the Ivy videos and the Commerce videos, you really don't rely on a script. Like, sure, it is great to have notes and practice, but have it all in your memory, because I know this is easier said than done, but they really like when you're yourself. They don't like when you look like a robot reading off a script. It really does not leave your application with kind of a good feeling. And so it's really, really important to just talk confidently, be yourself. And like Max said, you want to do activities that really are going to mean something, because for Ivy, I had 1 or 2 questions that really related to how did your passion or how did this activity help people? How did it help you get through high school? How did it help you grow? So you really want to make sure everything you're doing has a purpose and has a way that you'll be able to say, it helped me get through this, or I helped someone else do this.
Yeah, I think that's all great advice. I really loved what Haley said too, about showing your personality through your extracurricular activities. That's a great way to differentiate yourself. And then, so the next thing I want to ask, obviously it's important to taper expectations. You want to be realistic in your planning. If everyone could get into their top choice of university, that would be great. But unfortunately for some people, that doesn't happen. So did you have any backup plans for if in case you didn't get into your top choice university? Why did you? If so, what were they? And if you didn't, why did you feel like you didn't need to?
So that's a really good idea. For me, my top choices are Commerce and Ivy, but I applied to a lot of other business programs that I knew were really good, and a lot of them have co-op programs, just in case I don't get into my top choice. So some good examples are Dal Commerce has a really great co-op program. Same thing with Guelph Commerce, and then there's also Laurier BBA and a couple other programs. But I would say it is very important to have a backup plan and to also really look into those. Don't make it a last-minute decision for yourself. Really research, what's a strong backup plan for you? What do you want if you don't get into your top choice? Because you don't want to leave it till the last minute and be panicking when you might not get into your choices.
And it's also important when you're applying, you should be applying to at least 1 or 2 programs where you know for sure you will get in, whether it's an arts program, whether it's an easier business school. You want to have that peace of mind knowing that you will get in somewhere just in case,
And a lot of students often feel disappointed when they don't get into their top school because they're so focused on that one school. Of course, that's your dream school. You really want to go. That's going to be your desire, but you need to be a bit flexible. You need to adapt and just understand within yourself that may not happen. And you have to be ready for that situation where if it doesn't happen, you're going to have a positive mind, you're going to be okay, and you're going to have another backup school that you're going to feel comfortable at. So making sure that you're really exploring, whether that be going to listen to information sessions of other schools, going to visit their campuses. Make sure you're doing everything you can to look at these other schools that may not be your dream school, because there is a possibility that you end up there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Not to pick on Lisa a little bit, but she's very on board and very much so has a Queen's Commerce mindset and really wants to go there. So I think she can definitely give you some advice that during the process of applying, it can stress you out a little bit, sometimes a little bit too much. So it's very important to taper your expectations, and remember that even if you don't get your top choice, that's okay, and you can still get into some amazing universities.
And just like Austin said, like, yes, I'm very stressed about this application process. And there's no, like, people can tell you, don't be stressed, don't be stressed. Trust me, it doesn't work. Like, you will be stressed. It's a stressful time. It's probably the most stressful time you've had. But you have to understand that you will get in somewhere. You will be fine and you will be successful no matter where you go. Because in the end, the school you go, it's not as much about the school as about the person you are. You can make the most out of any school, and even if you don't get into your top choice and your friends are, you know what, just be happy for them. Maybe you'll get in, maybe you won't, but like I said, the stress won't go away. You just have to understand that everything will work out.
All right. I've never heard her say that before, so that's good to hear. So the final question I'm going to ask you guys is, do you think schools are providing enough support? So I know we all go to CHAT, so I guess you could talk about your time at CHAT specifically, but even if you know people from public schools, do they provide enough support and resources during the application process? And if not, what do you wish was available or you knew before starting the process?
So I remember that CHAT really gave us our first informative session regarding the OUAC application process near Halloween, so at the end of October. And it was kind of late, honestly. I think a lot of my peers and even people in the grade that I know have older siblings or older relatives that have gone through this process before, and they were already getting on to this OUAC portal and completing stuff ahead of time. So what I would encourage you CHAT students is not to wait for the school to come to you and to give you this informative session, but instead reach out, take the initiative, whether that be if you have an older sibling who's gone through this process, or reaching out to a friend or someone you know that has a connection to someone who has gone through this process before, doing that early because it relieves stress off of you. And these applications open very early. They open, in the fall of your grade 12 year, and most people in the grade who didn't have these connections to older students started them late, and it caused them a lot of stress towards the end of their application process because there's a firm date, there's no extensions, and if you submit it beyond that date, you're not going to be considered. So making sure you take the initiative to start earlier than the school informs you of will put you at its best, in your best position.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, the school definitely was late on introducing us to OUAC and how to apply properly, and I feel like they also didn't have enough resources for teaching us how to fill out a supplementary application in a very strong way. So for me, I worked with a program called Youthfully, where basically they match you up with a person who has either gone through the program that you want to go to or was very successful in their university career and getting into the programs that they wanted, and they help you really strengthen your application and make sure that you're hitting all the points, and you can practice a lot with somebody who knows the field inside and out. And even if you don't get in, I would honestly recommend just working with them because it really helps you strengthen your public speaking skills and the way you convey yourself to other people. So even if you don't get into your top choice program, it's still a very valuable experience to have.
Like Haley said, I fully agree. I also worked with someone, and even if I don't get into Queen's Commerce, which hopefully I do, then I still learned a lot of good skills that even I use at school. Like, I learned how to cut down words in such an effective way, and I learned better communication skills, and it really has helped me overall as a person. I do agree that you need to take the leadership to go and research. You should not wait for CHAT to do that for you, because then they kind of do it, they do it very late, and it's not crazy late, but it'll make you much more stressed. Like, in September, your first couple weeks of school, go on OUAC, research which programs you want to apply to, get in touch with people. If you want to work with someone, do that in September because they book up very fast. So it's really about taking leadership and working for what you want to achieve. It's in your hands, and it's important to kind of always stay on top of it.
All right, I think this was all really great advice. I want to thank our guests for today. And if I can leave you with one piece of advice, it would be that the university process and applying is obviously very stressful, but just remember that everyone goes through it, and there are people you can reach out to, past students, your teachers can help you, and ask your parents for advice and guidance. So we want to thank you all so much. Again, this was brought to you by the We Mean Business podcast of the Tannenbaum Chat Business Council. That's it.